You know, when a country's athletes just totally dominate on the world stage, it's inspiring,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
absolutely.
But what happens when that same country has to deal with a ton of really complicated social problems at the same time?
Hmm. Interesting question.
Well, that's what we're diving into today, a country dealing with exactly that.
We're taking a deep dive into a speech, actually.
Oh, right.
Delivered to their version of Parliament, it's called the Staten General. We'll really get into how they're trying to tackle these challenges.
This isn't just some random speech, though.
Definitely not.
This is like a glimpse into how a country at the top of its game is trying to use that same energy to fix some really tough problems, but where do they even start?
Well, get this. They kick things off with a victory lap, celebrating their athletes, their talent, their dedication, all those things we love to see.
Such a good tactic. Get everyone feeling good before you bring up the tough stuff, but they don't shy away from it, do they?
Not even a little bit. They go straight into a list of serious issues.
Like what?
Migration, housing affordability, the economy, the works. Like, okay, fun's over, time to get serious kind of move.
Right.
But starting on that positive note, it's like they're saying, we've tackled big problems before, we can do it again.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay, so they've set the stage, but then they hit us with this laundry list of problems. Honestly, it's the sheer range of issues that struck me.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking about immediate crises and long-term concerns all at once.
Totally. And even more interesting, they highlight this underlying anxiety that seems to be bubbling under the surface. Declining trust in the government, which is huge. It really suggests that people feel like the system just isn't working for them anymore.
That's definitely a sign that something has to change. So how do they plan to fix this disconnect, between the people and the people in power?
Well, one of their main points is that a lot of these problems are because of all these rules and bureaucracy that are just out of touch with what people are actually experiencing.
So it's not just these separate problems, it's the whole system that's failing to support the very people it's supposed to represent.
Exactly. They actually say the policy reality of the drawing board often doesn't match the everyday experience.
Wow. That's a powerful statement. It's like the people designing the policies are living in a totally different world than the people who are actually affected by them.
Exactly. And the speech goes on to emphasize how this disconnect makes people feel powerless, like no one's listening to them.
And you can see how that would be frustrating. If you feel like the deck is stacked against you, how do you even start to make a difference?
Absolutely. And the speech really emphasizes this by focusing on those needs we all have. Having a decent place to live, a steady income, feeling safe in our communities.
Yeah.
When those things start to feel out of reach, no wonder people lose trust.
So what's the solution? Do they offer any concrete answers?
They do. They call for a more service-oriented government.
Okay, so less bureaucracy, more action. That sounds good on paper, but how do they plan to actually make that happen?
Well, they outline a few key things. One is getting citizens involved earlier in the process of making policy.
So like bridging that gap between what's decided and what it's actually like.
Yeah. The idea is to bring the people who are actually affected by these policies into the conversation right from the start.
Interesting. What else?
Another interesting proposal is focusing more on regional needs.
Makes sense. What works in one place might not work somewhere else.
Exactly. It's about tailoring solutions, which means you need a government that's more adaptable and responsive.
That's a tall order.
Uh-huh.
But it seems like they know they need to change things up. What about specific issues? Do they give any details on how they'll deal with things like migration or the economy?
Yeah, they get into the specifics. The speech covers a bunch of different areas.
Okay.
And one thing that's really clear is this theme of balance.
Balance.
Like with migration, for example. They know that it can put pressure on things like housing and resources.
Right.
But they also know they need skilled workers, to keep the economy going.
It's not like you can just stop all migration. It's about finding ways to make it work, not just keeping people out. What are they actually proposing, though?
So they want to streamline the asylum process, make it easier for people who are really escaping tough situations.
Okay.
But they also want to make it harder to actually become a citizen.
Interesting.
And a big thing is cracking down on companies that take advantage of migrant workers. It's about making the system fair, but also compassionate.
I see. So they're really trying to tackle it from different angles. What about the economy in general? It seems like a lot of these problems depend on having a strong economy.
Absolutely. The speech emphasizes how important it is to have policies that are good for businesses. But they also talk about the need to diversify, not just rely on a few industries. They're talking about putting a lot of money into innovation, green tech,
Yeah.
Things that will keep the economy strong in the future.
Smart. Planning ahead, not just for right now.
Right. And they're not afraid to talk about the big picture either, especially when it comes to, like, global security.
Oh, okay.
They want to increase defense spending because the world is becoming a less stable place. But also, they talk about cybersecurity. It's like they realize that threats are changing, getting more complex.
Yeah, cybersecurity feels like a big deal for every country these days, not just this one.
It really is. And through it all, they keep coming back to this idea of Bestand-Sicherheit.
What's that?
It's about security and well-being, but on a deeper level, beyond just...
So making sure people feel safe, supported, able to actually live a good life.
Exactly. And it's interesting how they link that to everything else.
Yeah.
To all the policies.
So big picture, what do you think? Are they on the right track?
It's ambitious, I'll give them that.
Yeah.
And at least they're being honest about how hard it is to solve these problems. I guess whether they've done enough, whether these ideas will actually work. Those are questions for another deep dive.
Maybe we'll find out. But for everyone listening, here's something to think about. Think about those everyday things that just bug you, those problems where it feels like no one's listening. If you could totally change one thing, just hit the reset button, what would it be? And how would you even start to untangle that mess? It's a tough one, but worth considering. We'll be back next time with another topic to explore. Until then, keep those brains buzzing.